This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, I'm Dr. Annette Cargioli. I am the founder, inventor of a new way of taking care of emotions called emotional polarity technique, and we call it EPT for short. And we do free live sessions on on Wednesday and Thursday at 1 o'clock. If you think you'd be interested in trying this new technique for free, just send us a message on our Facebook page, live EPT forgiveness session, and we can get you hooked up. Now, you might be wondering what EPT is. EPT is a completely different approach to emotional health care, but it's not entirely new. We have over 25 years of clinical success ending depression, anxiety, all manner of physical and emotional pain in adults and children. So today I'm going to, and we do this with the foundation of forgiveness. So today I'm working with Rebecca Palmer, and Rebecca is a lovely lady who is living on her own, but she has lots of assistance to do that. She has cerebral palsy, in case you're watching and you're wondering. I'm just letting you know. However, she does do some work on her own and make some income, and she has her own apartment with assistance. And she's never done this type of emotional healthcare. So let me ask you, Rebecca, have you ever done any kind of counseling? Like, has anybody done counseling?
They have, and I'm currently waiting to see a counselor as well.
Okay,
So,
so you have done in your years of being alive, you've done some emotional counseling.
yes.
Okay, perfect. And Rebecca, currently she has some meds that she takes as well. But we're going to go ahead and what we kind of talked before we started. Rebecca and I talked about whether we should tackle a very specific idea or just in general what her body says is the best thing for her to deal with right here, right now. So we decided on that one. And so I'm going to start by just having, well, before I start, I'm going to do what's called, are you pretty good with your hands, or are you going to be limited that way, Rebecca? Like if I have you put your
I
hand,
I have I have the use of one hand. So I have the use of my right hand.
okay. Well, what we're going to do is I need you to put your right hand up next to your head, and I'm going to do this kind of for you. So you're just going to put your hand on your head, and I'm going to have you breathe in, and breathe out. And breathe in and breathe out. And then do that again. Breathe in, breathe out. And we're going to do 3 more as I lift the head. Breathe in and breathe out. And breathe in and breathe out. And one more time. Breathe in, breathe out. Okay, so emotional polarity technique, or EPT for short, can be done online remotely like we're doing now, or it can be done in person. And there's about 80% of the same thing in a remote session that's in an in-person session. Just for an example, if Rebecca were with me in person, I would be doing this to her or with her. I'd be using my hands on her head. So we have a little bit of limitation, but it's not enough to not make to make a huge difference. She still should be able to see a result. So that was our rapport procedure in EPT, to basically connect Rebecca more to her mind, more to her body. And so we can get started. So I'm going to start with, what stage of healing is Rebecca in right now in her life? And there are 7 stages of healing, and Rebecca shows that she is in stage 2. So stage 2 is anger. So what that means, so stage 1 is denial. You know, I'm doing pretty good. It's not that bad. I don't like it, but it's not that bad. That's denial. Anger is where there's things I don't like about my life, but I don't know how to feel better about them. I just don't know how, and I'm just kind of pissed off. And then after anger is bargain, and bargain is where, all right, I'll take the antidepressant, I'll take the anti-anxiety med, I'll go to a counselor, I'll do what I need to do, and then maybe it will get better. And then after bargain is depression, where I don't know why I'm depressed. I mean, I should be grateful because I'm even here, but I just feel depressed. So that's depression. And then after depression, which I'm hoping we'll get to today, is acceptance. Acceptance is where, I'm feeling lighter and I think that it is possible that my life could get better. So that's acceptance. After acceptance is light emerging, and light emerging is basically where things start to just get better on their own without a whole lot of effort. And my life starts to change. And then after light emerging, as this change comes into my life, I go into creation of new life, which means out of the blue, I'm now living in a new apartment, or I have a new boyfriend, or I have something in my life that's completely new. And I'm learning how to live with that now. And it's not going back the way it used to be. So those are the 7 stages of healing. So Rebecca, you're at that stuck place. My guess is that you've been bouncing because you told me you were on some antidepressant, anti-anxiety meds, that you've already gone to stage 4, which is depression. But it feels so bad being in depression that you just bounce back into anger, because being in anger, at least you can feel something and feel some energy. And then you try bargain again. So people often get stuck at anger, bargain, depression, and then they can't handle being in depression. So they go back to anger, and then they go back to bargain, and then they go back to depression. So what I'm hoping is we can kind of like get you past that hump of depression through bargain, through depression, and at least into acceptance, and maybe even as much as into light emerging or creation of new life before we're done. So we're going to say, so how many issues, and I'm muscle testing here. If Rebecca were here, I would use the arm that she can hold up, and I would push on her arm to muscle test. So that's another one of those differences. I have to actually use my muscle to test for Rebecca when we do it remotely. So this is the first issue: love, family, current, self, grief. And it's Rebecca's grief about her life. So before I ask you why, I'm going to write my notes here. So Rebecca feels, it means there's grief locked into her body, grief about her life and about life. And it's about her, about something. So well, I will go ahead and ask. So if you had to say, what do you feel grief about in your life right now? What would it be?
Um, well, my relationship with my family absolutely is awful. I constantly
Oh,
feel sorry for things that aren't my fault.
wow. So, all right. So let me make sure that's perfect. So you feel grief about your life because because you feel like your relationship with your family isn't good, and it's not good, right?
right.
And you get blamed. Is that what you were saying? You get blamed for things that aren't really your fault.
No, I take blame for things that aren't my fault.
Oh, does your family come around much?
No,
So they don't check on you?
no.
So how long have you been living on your own?
I see my family at the holidays,
Okay.
and I think that's only because it's the holidays and they feel obligated.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. And if I try to ask them about it, they're like, "Oh, you're just trying to seek attention." So I could ask you.
Oh, well, that proved them wrong, right? Um, so all right, so we're gonna just go with, I feel grief about my life because my family relationship is where what was it? I let myself be blamed for the problems.
I take blame for I I take blame for almost everything in a situation, and it's a good 75% not my fault.
Wow, but you recognize it's not your fault, but you still kind of compulsively take the blame.
Yeah, I apologize for things constantly. and there's no need for me to apologize.
Right, that it's not your fault. So, but your grief is, did you ever have a better relationship with your family, or has it always been this way?
It's always been this way.
Oh my gosh, since you were a kid.
Yeah,
Wow. So you couldn't wait to get out as soon as you could,
right,
so that so everybody could be happy and you could say, I'm out of there. So now I'm not the cause of all your problems.
right.
Oh my gosh. All right. Do they know they do this, or do they just do it?
They just do it and they think that it's just me seeking attention when I try and point it out. So,
Right. So, all right. So we're gonna do it's grief. All right. So I'm gonna do, because I can't, you don't have any magnets. So we're gonna do this session with these are my pretend magnets. EPT, and when we're in person, we use magnets, and this is the North Pole and the South Pole. And I can get away with doing some EPT without the magnets when I have to in a remote setting. If I were to do a series of EPT with somebody, I have them buy a set of magnets so they can use the magnets while I'm working with them online. So I'm just saying that for people who are wondering what I'm doing with this red and blue little, these are magnet covers. So, all right, so Rebecca feels grief. I'm gonna ask if there's an earlier time, conception to birth, birth 5 to 10, age 6. So yeah, so I get that the first time you really felt this was when you were 6 years old, that you started to feel this grief because um, my relationship with my family is that I'm kind of the sacrificial lamb. If things are going bad, it's my fault.
mhm,
And that's since you were 6. So if my mom's having a hard day when I'm 6, it's because I'm such a load. I'm a problem, and she wishes she didn't have me.
right,
So I'm thinking when I'm 6, as soon as I'm strong enough and well enough, I'm getting out of here.
pretty much.
So they can have, so they won't be able to blame me anymore. So they can maybe be happy because I'm not here.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So, this is so sad. Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a sister. She's 4 years younger than me.
And how are you with her?
She feels that I ruined her life because when she was younger, she would always ask and do things for me, like go get this for
Right.
your sister, go get go get this for your sister, go do this
So,
for your
so
sister.
she blames you for her unhappiness too,
Yeah,
or her failure is all your fault.
right.
Even though, let's face it, you didn't ask to be born with cerebral palsy. You didn't ask to be the kid who had the needs.
No,
It wasn't anything you could do anything about either.
right.
Wow. Wow. So she still feels that way.
I would say so. Yes, I haven't actually asked her because we don't have a good relationship either.
Yeah.
So
Is she married? Does she have a family?
she does. She's married with uh, 2 children, and she has a grandchild.
Wow. Wow. So do you have relationships with her kids?
My relationships with her children are actually better than my relationships with anybody else in the family.
Oh, that's awesome. Because they don't play the game. They don't know the story.
No, they don't know the story, but they can still see the game because my entire family goes on vacation without me.
Oh man.
So they still see it. They just don't know the back. They don't know the backstory.
Right. And they probably think you decided not to come. They didn't know that you
Oh,
just weren't invited.
oh, I'm sure, because I'm sure that's what they're told if they ask.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So what I would do if we were in person and I would put, I'm going to test your lung. Oh, wait, I'll go on the right so we can, yeah. So red, red. All right. So I need you to put your hand over your lung, your right, I'm sorry, your right hand right over your right lung, which is right under your shoulder right here. So you just need
Okay.
to put your hand right there. And then I'm going to do this part, and I need you to breathe in and breathe out. And breathe in and breathe out. And then breathe in and breathe out. And then are there any other emotions? No. So this is grief. Is there a trauma? So at age 6, when you went to school, so this is when you really felt the weight of this grief when you were 6 years old, and I'm guessing your sister was 2 years old, right?
Right.
So she would have been 2, and you were going to school. I'm thinking, were you in school at this time?
Yeah.
And were you in a special class or did you go to regular school?
I went to regular school.
Wow, that's great. Are you in a wheelchair or do you walk?
I'm in a wheelchair.
So you were in a regular school class, just like any of the other kids.
Right. I had a one-on-one
Person.
assistant,
Oh,
but I
that's
was
great.
I was in regular classes.
Did you go to kindergarten and then first grade? Or did you wait
I
till you were 6 to go to kindergarten?
I went to kindergarten and then first grade.
Okay, and when you were in kindergarten, were you 5 or 6?
5.
Okay, so at 6 you were in first grade.
Right.
All right. And do you know if there was any kind of trauma? Like, did your sister get hurt, or did mom go in the hospital, or did you have a broken arm, or did anything happen that you know of when you were 6?
Not when I was 6. No.
No. So do you remember, I mean, I don't know, you would have been okay with your 2-year-old sister then, right?
Right.
But you don't remember if you had any kind that you don't remember any trauma. Were you okay going to school? Were you excited to go to school or was it hard?
School didn't get hard until later on. So school was fun when I was 6.
It was fun.
Yeah.
So you were excited to go, and I'm
Right.
thinking feels grief because I take the blame and for what is going on. And this is at age 6, my grief about mom. So this is my grief about mom. Did your mom have anything going on at that time in her relationship or with your dad,
Um.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
what'd she have going
Uh,
on?
my dad's a recovering alcoholic.
Oh, so she had a husband who was an alcoholic,
Yeah.
and that was your dad.
Yeah. But he gave it up before I was 6, but they were still dealing with um trust issues and whatnot.
Right. So 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 you never really witnessed him having a problem.
Um, I remember him coming home intoxicated
Oh
because
wow.
when I gave it excuse me, when he gave it up was when my sister was born because my mom gave him an ultimatum.
Yeah. So that was
But
so
but
so
that
here's
happened. Go ahead, sorry.
okay, so here's what I'm thinking, that by the time you're 6, he is no longer an alcoholic, but they're still dealing with all the emotional stuff that goes with that.
Right.
But because he's not an alcoholic, now you become the reason they have problems.
I would say so. Yes.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. That because now we can't blame dad because he's not an alcoholic, now I feel like I have to be the blame
Right.
because he's fixed his problem, but I can't fix mine. I still have high needs.
Right.
So now when my parents are arguing and all of that, it can't be dad because he cleaned up his act, and now it must be me because I'm a mess.
Right.
So
And
that's what you were, yeah?
I think it goes a step further because if if you go back to when I was born 4.5 months early,
Yeah.
and the reason I was born early is because my dad pushed my mom down the stairs when he was drunk.
Oh my gosh. But when did you hear that story? How old were you?
I was probably 11, 12.
Wow. So you didn't know that at 6. You didn't know it
No,
cognitively, but you probably knew it internally.
right,
All right. So, all right. So, and it's like my mom's problems with him are my fault because he did this to her, because he did it to her when she was pregnant with me. It's
right,
almost like he did it to you.
right.
All right. So this is a big load of grief that is in your
Yep,
family because your dad had this hateful behavior, and he was an alcoholic, and then he cleaned it up, but there was always this child who had been injured and was born early that they didn't expect this to happen, to have a high needs
right,
problem child.
right.
So yeah. All right. And that's another reason why they're afraid to have you around them, because it reminds them of that.
Most likely, yes.
Because in a weird way, your dad and your mom, no, they unconsciously or consciously are think that we did this to her. We
I
did
would
this,
guess so.
George. We did this. It was an accident, and we didn't mean to have it happen to her. But now we did it. We did it, and they don't want to be reminded of that. So they're always blaming you, is what I'm thinking.
Right,
Because you don't make them feel good, because you remind them of their own shame, their own guilt, and they can't handle it,
right.
which is really their deep, deep love for you. They didn't want this to happen to you, but it did. And
Yep.
yet here you are, you're in your 40s and you're doing well.
They wouldn't think so, but I like to think so.
You know what though? Your dad could have killed you in that moment. You like escaped death then.
Right,
And now here you are.
right,
You've already beaten all the odds at how long people thought you would be able to live, and you're living on your
right,
own without like any support from your family.
right.
Wow, that's amazing. I am amazed at you. All right, so I'm gonna go. So this is the grief. We did the grief, and now we're gonna do forgiveness. So phase one, let's see, phase one, phase two, phase one. Yeah. So all right, so you're gonna take your right hand, and you're going to tap it on this side of your head, on your right side of your head. And we're going to do, so phase one trauma means that Rebecca is in a state of, I want to say, you're very conscientious and worried and about how other people think. You're always very trying to figure out how to make it so it's not so hard on them. You don't want to be a bother. You overthink things. So is that true?
That's 100% true.
Okay, yeah. And I only know that because you tested as phase one trauma, and phase one trauma is the person who says, "Oh my gosh, I'm going down the stairs. I'm going to die. Am I going to be born? And what's going to happen to me?" So it's like the person in a trauma who's like just terrified for their life. So then
Right,
your mind keeps doing that. So
right.
I need you to say, "I forgive myself for believing."
I forgive myself for believing.
Oh wait, I'm gonna check one more thing. Show up, pay attention, tell the truth, let go. Okay, I'm good on show up, pay attention, tell the truth, let go. I'm not surprised though. I'm sorry. I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing
that I have to hold on to the grief
that I have to hold on to the grief
about my life
about my life
and my family
and my family
because no one else will be responsible.
because no one else will be responsible.
Because no one else will take responsibility
Because no one else will take responsibility
for, wow, for the trauma
for the trauma
of yeah, of before I was born.
of before I was born.
When my dad
When my dad
pushed my mom downstairs when she was pregnant
pushed my mom down the stairs when she was pregnant
and caused my early birth
and caused my early birth
and the physical problems that went with that.
and the physical problems that went with that.
And then breathe. I'm gonna tap on the other side too. I forgive myself
I forgive myself
for believing
for believing
that I have to constantly apologize
that I have to constantly apologize
for the damage
for the damage
that my parents are responsible for
that my parents are responsible for
in my early arrival and birth.
in my early arrival and birth.
And then breathe. I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing
that, wow, that letting go of the grief
that letting go of the grief
um, would not be good for my family
would not be good for my family
because, wow, because they can't live with what they did.
because they can't live with what they did.
Yeah, the hurt my dad caused in his drunk state,
The hurt my dad caused in his drunk state
and how I became
and how I became
the child that was sacrificed
the child that was sacrificed
so they could feel okay,
so they could feel okay,
so he could quit drinking,
so he could quit drinking,
so they could get what they finally wanted.
so they could get what they finally wanted.
And then breathe. I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing
that I can't feel happy in my life
that I can't feel happy in my life
and have better relationships
and have better relationships
and I want to say experiences of success
and experiences of success
and appreciation.
and appreciation
Um, yeah, because because then my parents would have to deal with their own responsibility.
because then my parents would have to deal with their own responsibility.
And then breathe. Yeah. I forgive my dad
I forgive my dad
for being a drunk
for being drunk
and hurting my mom and me,
and hurting my mom and me,
and then blaming us
and then blaming us
for the result of the trauma
for the result of the trauma
that he created.
that he created.
And then breathe. I tear down
I tear down
every altar
every altar
in my family
in my family
to child sacrifice.
to child sacrifice.
I ask God to tear them all down
I ask God to tear them all down
and to show mercy
and show mercy
to me
to me
and my whole family.
and my whole family.
And then breathe. I forgive myself
I forgive myself
for believing
for believing
that I have to sacrifice my joy
that I have to sacrifice my joy
and my feelings of peace and fulfillment
and my feelings of peace and fulfillment
and good relationships with my family
and good relationships with my family
or happiness in relationships outside of my family,
or happiness in relationships outside my family.
um, so that my dad will stay sober and they will have a happy life.
So that my dad will stay sober and they will have a happy life.
And then breathe. Yeah. I forgive myself
I forgive myself
for believing
for believing
that I had to cut them out
that I had to cut them out
or they had to cut me out
or they had to cut me out
to have a happy life,
to have a happy life,
to have feelings of fulfillment and love
to have feelings of fulfillment and love
and happiness in their marriage.
and happiness in their marriage.
And then breathe. Yeah. I say yes
I say yes
to the grief
to the grief
that I have put in place of my family
that I have put in place of my family,
to hold the space for my family
to hold the space for my family,
so that grief is my family.
so that grief is my family.
And I call up all this grief
And I call up all this grief
and I release it
and I release it
from my body, mind, and spirit.
from my body, mind, and spirit.
And then breathe. I forgive my family
I forgive my family
for believing
for believing
that some sacrifice had to be made and I was it.
that some sacrifice had to be made and I was it.
So they could all be happy and my dad would stay sober.
So they could all be happy and my dad would stay sober.
And then breathe. I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing
that I had to sacrifice my life
that I had to sacrifice my life
so that my dad would stay sober and everyone could be happy in the family.
so my dad could stay sober and everyone could be happy in the family.
And so that no more children would be lost.
And no more children would be lost.
And then breathe. Without this pattern,
Without this pattern,
I am free
I am free
to stop identifying
to stop identifying
as the sacrificial child
as the sacrificial child
who can't have joy or relationships
who can't have joy in relationships
or love
or love
or find meaning in life
or find meaning in life,
or have purpose,
or have purpose,
not because of my condition,
not because of my condition,
but because of this situation in our family
but because of the situation in our family,
where my family
or my family
positioned me as the sacrifice.
positioned me as a sacrifice.
So that my dad would stay sober and nothing else bad would ever happen.
So my dad could stay sober and nothing else bad would ever happen.
And they could be happy.
And they could be happy.
And then breathe. Without this pattern,
Without this pattern,
I am free to accept
I am free to accept
my place in this family
my place in this family
is God-given,
is God given,
and I am not the sacrifice
and I am not the sacrifice
because God already made a sacrifice for my family, and it's not me.
because God already made a sacrifice for my family, and it's not me.
Not me, and it never was.
It's not me, and it never was.
And then breathe. Without this pattern,
Without this pattern,
I can stop taking the blame.
I can stop taking the blame.
I release the guilt and shame
I release the guilt and shame
that I have carried
that I have carried
for my dad.
for my dad.
I release it back to him
I release it back to him
because it's never been my fault.
It's never been my fault.
His hurtful behavior was not my fault.
His hurtful behavior was not my fault.
Then or now.
Then or now.
And then breathe. Without this pattern,
Without this pattern,
I am free
I am free
to hold my parents in a place of love and respect
to hold my parents in a place of love and respect
without being
without being
the sacrificed child.
the sacrificed child.
And then breathe. Without this pattern,
Without this pattern,
I am free
I am free
to grow up and live my life
to grow up and live my life
and be happy
and be happy
and form friendships
and form friendships
and find meaning
and find meaning
and purpose
and purpose
outside of being the sacrificed child.
outside of being the sacrificed child.
And then breathe. Oh, that's so good. I give my parents permission to forgive me
I give my parents permission to forgive me
for letting go
for letting go
of being the sacrificed child.
of being the sacrificed child
Um, yeah, so that they can get what they want.
so that they can get what they want.
Even if I sacrifice forever, I can't make their lives better.
Even if I sacrifice forever, I can't make their lives better.
I can't make them kind and good people.
I can't make them kind and good people.
And even if I sacrifice forever
Even if I sacrifice forever
and apologize for everything,
and apologize for everything,
I cannot make them take responsibility for what they've done that's wrong.
I cannot make them take responsibility for what they've done that's wrong.
I can't make them better people.
I can't make them better people.
I can't make them love me.
I can't make them love me.
And then breathe. Without this pattern,
Without the Saturn,
I am free
I am free
to take back all the power I gave up,
to take back all the power I gave up,
being the sacrificial child,
being the sacrificial child,
and that frees me
and that frees me
to grow up,
to grow up,
to be the adult
to be the adult
in my life,
in my life,
to create friends and good relationships
to create friends and good relationships
without constantly apologizing.
without constantly apologizing.
Yeah, and then breathe. Without this pattern,
Without this pattern,
I am free to accept
I am free to accept
exactly how I am
exactly how I am
without feeling limited
without feeling limited
in my soul
in my soul
to being the blame
to being the blame
for the unhappiness that happens in my birth family.
for the unhappiness that happens in my birth family.
And then breathe. I let go
I let go
of the perfect, loving family that never existed.
of the perfect loving family that never existed,
And that opens space
and that open space
for me to accept the family I have just the way they are.
for me to accept the family I have just the way they are,
Even if they never change or get worse.
even if they never change or get worse.
My sacrifice can't change that.
My sacrifice can't change that.
And then breathe. Wow. All right. So how are you feeling?
Better.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Because
I don't know.
just what you told me, I am just kind of in awe of how you've lived your life. And even under this pattern of influence from your family, it tells me that you have a very kind, generous heart and that you just want your family to be okay. And if it means I have to be the one who says, I'm sorry all the time, sorry that I wasn't born the way you wanted, sorry that I couldn't take that fall down the stairs when dad pushed you because he was drunk, sorry I can't make your marriage work out because you two are terrible in relationship together, sorry I might have to have some extra care that I didn't cause. You don't have to say all that, but you're like trying to like exclude yourself, which is fine. I'm thinking, I might want to not be around them because they're just kind of they're kind of avoidant people. And I don't mean avoidant of you, they're avoidant of themselves. Like they don't want to tell the
Right,
truth. They don't want to like face things the way they are.
right,
And you kind of like just went, okay, if that's what it takes to be a part of this family and to belong, I will be the sacrificial child. I will be a child forever, right? Which is crazy,
right,
because, you said you have a job, but it's kind of like a kid in high school. Like I sometimes have income and sometimes I don't, and so I don't really dream big about how I could actually have a viable income and what that might look like and do what I love, because you've been stuck in this place of feeling like you're the child because I have to be the child so they can blame me.
That's right. But right now, it's just a hobby that sometimes I make money off of, and sometimes
Oh,
I
that's
don't.
good. Right. However, you could turn a hobby into something that's more than a hobby, and you could actually expand it. But,
Right,
but I'm saying, yeah, you've been stuck as a child in your family, but you are, just from what I hear, what little I know about you and them, you
right,
sound a whole lot more mature in your thinking.
yeah,
And you're willing to forgive and sacrifice and do whatever they need whenever they need you to do it, which is funny because you're the one who has much more of the great needs just by virtue of how you were born,
right,
which tells me how strong you really, really are. And you've been doing this since you were 6.
right,
And I'm saying the mindset that I believe we shifted today would be so that your mind can like relax and accept that you are an adult, that you really are an adult, and that you don't need something from your parents anymore. And
right,
it's, yeah, it's sad that they are the way they are, but it's not, I'm not going to let that sadness keep me from having all kinds of friends and, creating what I want to create in my life,
right,
the experiences I want to create. Now, everybody, even people without cerebral palsy, have limitations in what they can create.
right,
I'm never going to be the president. Maybe nobody's going to be the president after today, but I'm never going to be the president. And I accept that. I don't like grieve it because I can't be the president. I just look at what
right,
is possible for what I've been given and what do I want to create with that. And that's what you should be doing, where you
right,
really, instead of feeling so tied up with this messy family,
right,
I mean, you gotta like, yeah, that's that you have to just be happy for them, even if, because you might not want to go on vacation with them anyway.
right.
You might want to create your own vacation.
Well, I've created my own family, so
That is
I go
incredible.
through.
Right. So,
Right,
and so that now what I think you should notice is that how you feel with the friends and family that you have that actually are way more supportive of you, that you don't have to say you apologize all the time, that you can actually feel like you belong and that, you know what, I can enjoy this family without feeling the grief of the loss for my own family and without feeling like I'm a child, because you're not a
right.
child. You're a
Nope.
grown woman.
Right. And as this was going on, I mean, I understand it's going on your Facebook page, but as this was going on, I found myself thinking, oh my goodness, if my family sees this, there's going to be hell to pay because
You know what,
I
though?
told.
You know what? They're never going to see it, Rebecca, because they don't look up things about emotions. So
That's
they're never going to see it. They're not going to see it. And I'm not going to put your last name, so they would have to find some notorious Rebecca. They're never going to see it. And I love the idea that, you know, by putting it on the page, it's like you saying, I don't mind sharing my story, and I'm not afraid that my parents aren't ever going to see it because they don't look up stuff like this. You would
no.
have to dig deep. It's not like it's going to fly in their face because it's not. They would have to go digging.
Right,
They would have to be interested in emotional change, and they are not.
right.
So, yeah. So, you do not have to worry about that. I need you to say, I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing.
that I can't uh, I can't share my story helping others
I can't share my story helping others
without feeling afraid
without feeling afraid.
that wow, that I will offend or hurt my parents or make them angry.
that I will hurt or offend my parents or make them angry,
even though we're all adults.
even though we are adults.
And then breathe. I forgive myself for believing
I forgive myself for believing
that I'm going to hurt my parents by telling the truth.
I'm going to hurt my parents by telling the truth.
And then breathe. Yeah, I forgive myself
I forgive myself
for letting my parents' sensitivity and immaturity
for letting my parents' sensitivity and immaturity
um wow, make me feel afraid,
make me feel afraid,
even though I'm not 6 anymore.
even though I'm not 6 anymore.
And there's nothing they can do to me.
And there's nothing they can do to me.
And even if I never shared my story,
And even if I never share my story,
um, I can't make their life better.
I can't make their life better.
I can't make the hurt they feel with each other go away.
I can't make the hurt they feel with each other go away.
And then breathe. Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay, how's that feel?
I feel like I can't walk, but if I could, I feel like I would be floating right now.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy for you, Rebecca. You just went from age 6 to adult. And you
Right,
are pretty amazing. And my hope, like I said, is my hope is, and I'm going to say subjective units of distress with the well, stage of healing. You're at stage 6, so we went over the hump of depression. So I do feel you're going to feel lighter, and you're going to feel better than you ever felt in your relationships that you like, the relationships you actually chose, because they won't
right,
be reminders. They won't be reminders of the messed up, hot mess family you left,
right,
that you kind of just feel a little distant from. And, you
right.
know, I want you to say this too, without this pattern,
Without this pattern,
um, my physical disabilities
my physical disabilities
have nothing to do with
have nothing to do with
um, the control and blame and anger
the control and blame and anger
that my birth family has held over me.
that my birth family has held over me.
Yeah, it goes much deeper.
Wow.
Yeah, it goes much deeper. Even if I had a perfect body, they'd be doing this.
Even if I
So
had a perfect body, they'd be doing this.
they'd still be doing this. Yeah. And then breathe. Oh, this feels better. Without this pattern,
Without this pattern,
my physical disabilities
my physical disabilities
are no longer the blame
are no longer to blame
for the hatred and blame my parents and my family have held over me.
for the hatred and the blame that my parents and family have held over me.
It runs much deeper than that.
It runs much deeper than that.
And they just see this disability and blame it.
And they just see the disability and blame it.
And don't take me seriously.
And don't take me seriously.
And then breathe. Yeah. Without this pattern,
Without this pattern,
my physical disability,
my physical disability
yeah, no longer has the power
no longer has the power
to wow, to be the reason my family is one hot mess.
to to be the reason my family is one hot mess.
Yeah, it's not my disability. They can blame it all day long, but that's not why they're a hot mess. And then
It's
breathe.
not my. Wow.
That feels really good.
Yeah.
That feels so good. Yes,
I grew up over the last hour.
you totally did. And the other thing you did, I want to do one more statement. Without this pattern, I am free to love all of me.
Without this pattern, I'm free to love all of me.
More than my family ever could even love.
More than my family could ever even love.
I can love this body and all the disability
I can love this body and all the disability.
because this was not the reason my family is a hot mess.
Because this is not the reason my family is a hot mess.
It was just an easy out so they didn't have to deal with their stuff.
It was just an easy out so they didn't have to deal with their stuff.
And then for you. Yeah. Wow. That feels good too.
Yeah.
So good.
Yep.
You did fantastic. And now you know what an EPT session is like. Some forgiveness, a little help from God, a lot of help from God,
Yep.
and your ability to really accept your parents, even if they never change or get worse. Maybe they're never going to invite me on a vacation. I don't have time to sit and grieve that. It's like, whatever, I'm an adult. I'm not a little kid who's being left at home. I can do what I want.
Right.
Within what I've been given.
Right.
Thank God you're not stuck there with them anymore.
Right.
Wow. All right. Well, this will be recorded, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the record button now to end it, and I will send you a copy. But let's see here.
Okay.